When we think about the fighting during World War I, the images that you just saw, that's what we think about. Brutal trench warfare, soldiers going over the top, attacking the other trench, relentless shelling going on day after day, rain, mud. Those are all images that are stuck into our minds. But I'm now actually at a site that saw a different kind of warfare. I'm just outside the village of Frétoy in northern France, and here, at this site behind me, this is where we saw the last lance-on-lance action of the war, the Battle of Montcel-Frétoy.
When World War I erupted on the Western Front in 1914, the battle lines were constantly shifting. German forces launched an invasion of France, aiming to capture Paris within 40 days and crush the French and British armies. Initially, the Germans saw significant success, winning key victories in August of 1914 at the Battle of Mons and the Battle of the Frontiers. During what became known as the Great Retreat, French and British forces were pushed southward until the German advance finally halted just 40 miles from Paris in the Marne River Valley. French troops were redeployed from eastern borders with Germany to the Western Front, and soon the British and French outnumbered the exhausted German forces. This led to the week-long First Battle of the Marne, fought from September 5th to September 12, 1914.
During the First Battle of the Marne, German and Allied forces clashed along a 230-kilometer long front line, which was ideal for cavalry forces. They were used for reconnaissance but also to charge enemy positions. September 6th and 7th, 1914, the Battle of Montcel-Frétoy happened here in these fields behind me. 2 days of fighting before the front lines shifted once again. And on the second day of the battle, British and German forces clashed here in these fields in what would become known as the last lance-on-lance battle of the war, and some even say human history.
Cavalry lancers were an elite force in many armies throughout history, renowned for their speed, agility and the formidable lance they wielded. Originating in the medieval period, lancers played a crucial role in battles by using their long, spear-like weapons to charge enemy formations, break through infantry lines and engage in direct combat with opposing cavalry. The lance, typically made of wood with a steel tip, allowed cavalrymen to strike opponents from a distance while maintaining momentum. Mounted on fast, powerful horses, lancers could quickly traverse the battlefield, making them ideal for reconnaissance, flanking maneuvers and rapid assaults.
On the morning of September 7th, 1914, a detachment of the 9th Queen's Royal Lancers, about 30 men strong, was riding here in this area doing some reconnaissance when they heard gunfire. And commanding this detachment was Lieutenant Colonel David Campbell, and he decided to check out the gunfire for himself. He positioned his men behind a haystack and he went off, trying to find where the gunfire was coming from. And then he found beneath the trees, in a small wooded area, he found approximately 100 Prussian Guard dragoons on horseback, which also spotted him and gave chase.
David Campbell embodied the quintessential swashbuckling cavalry officer, known as Sorer, a nickname he earned from his victorious ride in the 1896 Grand National on the horse of the same name. He was also a champion jockey and polo player. Just days before the battle, on August 24th, he had led the 9th Lancers in a costly and deadly charge against German guns at Éluges, emerging unscathed from the harrowing encounter.
After being spotted by the Prussian Guard dragoons, Campbell raced back to his men who were still positioned behind the haystack where he left them. He circled the haystack and he said to his men, "Follow me," and he led the charge well ahead of his men.
American journalist Frederick Coleman observed the entire battle from the safety of his motorcar. From his vantage point, he watched as the British and German lancers charged at each other. Coleman later wrote about the Germans: "Magnificent in the morning sun they rode, a solid line, rising and falling with regular cadences as though mechanically propelled."
In contrast, Coleman described the British lancers quite differently. He depicted Lieutenant Campbell leading the charge, followed by what he called a scattered, scurrying bunch, riding like mad, full tilt at the ranks of German pride and might bearing down upon them. As the two sides approached each other, the Germans lowered their lances, forming what Coleman described as a disagreeable-looking wall of steel blades. Colonel Campbell charged directly at the troop leader, shooting him with his pistol. A furious battle occurred as the British lancers crashed into the left side of the Prussian Guard Dragoons. One British lancer later recalled to Coleman that he thrust his lance so hard into the body of a German soldier that his hand touched the German chest. The battle was brief but intense, and after 15 minutes of fierce fighting, superior numbers of the Germans began to overwhelm the British lancers, and they decided to retreat back to the village of Frétoy. The battle resulted in 3 dead and 5 wounded on British side, and yeah, the numbers on German side remain unknown, but it is believed that there are far more German casualties than British. One of the men that was wounded was Lieutenant Colonel David Campbell, who led the charge, and he was found in this field behind me by a medical officer with a gunshot wound to his leg, a lance wound to his shoulder, and a sword wound to his arm. And I made my way to the communal cemetery here in Frétoy. It's a small cemetery where people who live here are buried, but there are also 3 graves here of 9th Royal Lancer soldiers, and we're gonna take a look at them right now. So here are the graves. The first one is right here. There's another grave in between, but the other 2 9th Royal Lancer graves are resting there side by side. And the first one over here is a little bit difficult to read. The stone has been, weathered by the elements, but this is the grave of A.T. Pryor, Private 9th Lancers, and he died September 6th, 1914. So that's the first day of the Battle of Montcel-Frétoy. So he wasn't killed at the battle that we talked about. It was led by Lieutenant Colonel David Campbell, and the same applies for this soldier who was buried here. It's A.J. Friend, who was a shoeing smith, so he looked out for the horses, I think, and he also died September 6th, 1914. But the third grave here is from a soldier, Lieutenant Alfrey, I don't know how you pronounce it, but he was killed September 7th, age 22, and we know for a fact that he was killed during the battle which involved the charge against the Prussian Guard Dragoons. During the battle, Lieutenant Alfrey dismounted his horse to assist a wounded officer he found in the fields where the battle was going on, and he was injured by an enemy lance which had been thrust through his leg, and as Lieutenant Alfrey attempted to remove the lance from his comrade's legs, he was shot dead by a nearby wounded Prussian soldier who was lying on the ground after being knocked off his horse. He was 22 years old. So I already showed you Lieutenant Alfrey's photograph in this video while I was talking about him, but I also decided to print out his photo and bring it with me, and I'm going to place it at his grave, and hopefully when people visit the cemetery and they have a look at this grave, they have a face to the name. And I think it's always important to know what these guys look like. You know, for a lot of these soldiers, we don't know what they look like. There are no photographs, but when we do, I always try to bring the photograph with me and place it at the grave, and hopefully it gets left there or it doesn't blow away or anything. And it makes it more real, you know, when you see the face. Gravestone is nice and all, but to see his face, it adds something extra, I think. And another thing that I brought with me is this. This is an original World War I cap badge of the 9th Queen's Royal Lancers. And I'm not going to leave it here because it's a little bit too valuable for me. and this one I'm going to keep at home together also with his picture. And yeah, but I thought it was a nice idea to bring it to these graves. There's 3 men resting here to yeah, bring a little bit back from the unit. Just 5 days after this historic battle that happened at this location, the first Battle of the Marne came to an end. The German forces were forced to retreat up to 90 kilometers north, and it set up what would become known as the Race to the Sea, where the Allied forces and the German forces tried to outflank each other. Neither succeeded in outflanking each other, and yeah, soon they dug in, and this is what set off the infamous trench warfare, which became synonymous with World War I. And with the start of trench warfare, the role of cavalry forces and that of lancers changed dramatically. Barbed wire, machine guns and deep trenches made it very ineffective to use cavalry forces in charges, and also too dangerous. So a lot of these soldiers were assigned to other units, mostly infantry units, and those soldiers who stayed on horseback, they were repurposed, they were used for reconnaissance, and mainly on the outskirts of the front line where there were less trenches, and yeah, they could still be used for reconnaissance. But yeah, in charges they weren't used anymore because, yeah, like I said, it was too dangerous and ineffective. So that was a little bit insight into the Battle of Montcel-Frétoy, the last lance-on-lance battle of World War I or even human history. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Maybe you consider subscribing to the channel, really help out a lot. And yeah, I hope to see you on the next one. Bye bye.